Hi, it's Richard Moore from Racing Profits Guides, and we're up here at Mount House Stables with James Given, the trainer, and we're just going to have a bit of a talk about the St Leger. We're coming up to the St Leger Festival next week at Doncaster, and we're going to look at the St Leger itself on the Saturday of the festival. We're going to discuss really the course, horses that do well in the course, and give you some of the things to think about before the race and also to look for during the race itself. Thank you for your time today, James.
Not a problem, it's always good to see you here.
Thank you. And the St Leger, obviously over the years training, you've had a couple of entries in there, have you?
Yeah, had a couple of runners without any great success. One arguably maybe didn't stay in the ground about 35-40 minutes before the race. The heavens absolutely opened and it went loose and soft, and he liked a firm surface. And the other runner, she really didn't stay. She was really a 9 to 10 furlong horse maximum. She'd been third in the Oaks, so it was worth a go, but she didn't stay the extra distance.
No, who was that?
A filly called Somerville.
Oh, Somerville, okay. And the course itself, let's discuss a bit about the course then. Obviously you start at the bottom of the Bawtry Road, so you get a good long 4.5 furlongs before you hit Rose Hill and start to climb.
Correct, yes, it's a long time to sort of sort themselves out. The distance is in fact a little bit further than the mile 6 it's always referred to. It is a mile 6 and 132 yards.
Right.
So technically, and to be a pedant, it is nearer a mile and 7 than it is a mile and 6. It's always referred to as a mile and 3/4 race, but it's just that little bit further.
And so they start climbing then at the end of the Bawtry Road.
Yes, I mean, I think the emphasis on Rose Hill can be overestimated. It isn't really a great deal of a hill. It's a small rise and a small fall.
Right.
I wouldn't really consider that as part of your reckoning of how the race is going to be run. I mean, they don't rise very much, and again, they don't, over a fairly short distance, they don't come back downhill. And it's certainly, way out in the country, if you like. It's way before they start racing, so I don't think it really has an impact on how the race unfolds.
No, and I think Doncaster's always regarded as a very flat track, isn't it? But I just, having walked around it, Rose Hill is a little bit more than you think. You think it's going to be flat, but it is actually quite a climb there. And do you think as they start turning down Rose Hill, do you think it requires a lot more balance in a horse, or is it not that tight a turn to really
I don't think
put them
so.
off?
I don't think so. And as I say, it's so far out in the country, they're not racing at all at that point. And they're not jockeying for position. They've jockeyed for position going down parallel to Bawtry Road. They've got their position, whether they like it or not, that's where they are. And the whole pack don't really change position relative to each other as they go over and down. And as also, it's not got an odd camber on it like Epsom. It's just a slight downhill, and it doesn't seem to unbalance or give horses undue problems.
No. And then they sweep round. For how long would you say that turn is? Because it's quite a long turn, isn't it?
It must be getting on for probably about 4 furlongs or more.
And then they come into the home straight.
Yeah.
And then on the home straight, obviously, it's a very wide galloping straight. Where do you think the race then starts to develop?
It depends. If you've had a very strong pace, it's developing quite a long way out. More like a sort of a national hunt race where the picture of the race is unfolding quite a further out. If it's run at a more sedate pace with a sprinting finish, it may be between the 3 and the 2 pole that the race starts to unfold.
So there's plenty of time. There's not really many hard luck stories there, you want to say?
Well, yes and no. I mean, last year Camelot seemed to get in a bit of a bother and didn't get out in time. I mean, the winner had a cloud put over it this year with the positive drug test.
So Enki did,
it made you wonder what was going on there last year. But certainly Camelot, even though it's a big, wide open track, you can still get traffic problems, and Camelot didn't get the smoothest of ride-throughs last year.
And I suppose it depends on the size of the field as well, doesn't it, on that?
Indeed, yes, and also how many of them are actually staying, because by the time you get to the 2 pole, say, you've actually travelled 14.5 furlongs, and some horses may have cried enough by then anyway, and so would just be falling back and backwards, which itself can cause problems as they're coming back through the field and cause traffic problems. Or they're just simply not involved at that point.
Not involved, no. And talking of the size of the fields, obviously a lot of the stats say that there's no real draw advantage, although you'd say that 7 out of the 11 of the last winners have been drawn 5 or more, but you don't.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you mentioned that earlier, and that the one winner has come from stall 1. I mean, if the average field size is 14 in the last 11 years, and if it was purely random application, there'd be 3 stalls that haven't had a winner. Is that significant or not?
No.
The fact that they're stalls 2, 3 and 4 may be significant, but I'd be a little bit wary about drawing too much of a conclusion from that, bearing in mind the length of the race and the fact that they've got a long straight before they get to a bend to sort out where they want to be in the race.
Yeah.
And then plenty of time, hopefully, unless you get traffic problems, to sort themselves out in the home straight as well.
Yeah, so you'd have thought it's not vital to get a great position early on in the race because you've got time.
It depends on what you want to do with the horse. If you want to be handy with the horse, yes, it is important. Or if you've got a keen type of horse and you want to get some cover, then again, it's very important. I mean, you wouldn't want to be drawn wide if you've got a keen horse.
No.
You'd want to be able to get in behind some horses, but if you are drawn, say, 14 runners and you're drawn out in 14, you know, you might end up further back than you actually wanted to be in order to get some cover.
Yeah, so you wouldn't get the cover he wanted, or you'd have to drop him back to get the cover.
So the draw may be significant only really in the light of how that horse wants to be ridden.
And also the trip, we talk about it being, you know, quite a bit over the 1 mile 6. The other interesting fact is that 10 out of 11 have never run over that trip. Do you think that's just because it's for 3-year-olds and there aren't that many races over that distance through the year?
Well, there aren't really very many options for them, as you say, correct. There is the Queen's Vase at Royal Ascot, which is over 2 miles for 3-year-olds, and that's quite early in the year. I mean, generally in many ways, it's not a trial in any way, but it's just an indicator of what next year's Gold Cup horse might be. That's not to say a horse that could win over 2.5 miles as a 4-year-old isn't going to run over a mile and 6.5 furlongs well at 3.
Yeah.
I mean, you are only dropping back technically 308 yards. It's not, when you look at it that way around, it's not a great deal of difference in distance.
No, that's right.
So there's that, but that's quite early in the year, and generally the more classic type of horse that may well end up being a Ledger horse would not perhaps be ready to run that distance then.
No. Well, I think that's a good spot where we move on to the horses, so we'll
Yeah.
do the horses in the next part. Is that great?
Sure.
Okay.